Greetings, the Designing Hollywood podcast, brought to you by Martika Ibarra and the great, legendary Hollywood costume designer, Marilyn Vance. I am afforded the wonderful opportunity of co-hosting the show. If you are interested in the magic of Hollywood, the design of Hollywood, the clothes of Hollywood, watch the Designing Hollywood podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts from, or find the video version on the John Campea YouTube channel. That's right, the Designing Hollywood podcast. Why would you ever want to miss it? Especially if you love the movies.
Observations with Robert Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your evangelist of the imagination, and the as-yet undefined, existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, me, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I'm Rob casting at you. You imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. This is Robservations, episode number 883. This is a very exciting show for me to be doing. As you know, one of the sort of underpinnings of this show is filmmaking in all of its myriad forms: directors, producers, actors, writers. We talk about it all here. We celebrate both finished films and we celebrate the making of movies. And you've heard too much about me making Tango Shalom, which, by the way, is streaming on Peacock, and it is available on Amazon, and it opens in Germany in October. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. We are here to talk about a brand new, very exciting science fiction film project called Island in the Stars, and it is using state-of-the-art technology to create epic science fiction on, let's call it, not a Star Wars budget. And I have the writer-director, and two of the producers here with me. But before I get to them, let's give you a little taste of Island in the Stars.
My name is Vernon Wells. I'm an actor and a producer. And what we're talking about is a wonderful film I'll be doing called Island in the Stars.
Island in the Stars is the story of a young woman named Jackie Driscoll, who on a faraway planet encounters a roguish space pirate who has with him a mysterious box that may lead to her missing father, as her destiny lies hidden on an island in the stars.
So my name is Emily Coop. I am an actor, singer-songwriter, and I'm playing Jackie. Island in the Stars is pretty much Pirates of the Caribbean meets Star Wars. I mean, it's going to be amazing.
It's the kind of movie that 14-year-old Tom would have been like, I want to see this! I have to see this movie! Because I think you should be making films, you should be making art that you yourself want to see.
So when we started putting this together, I just started going through my Rolodex of 40 years odd of people, not just people in front of the camera, but people behind the camera, people that I know, calling in favors and talking to people. Because I think that this film deserves to have the best.
Obviously working with Dream Screens Australia is huge. They're an amazing, talented group of people, and the technology they're bringing into film is just fantastic.
It's going to be wonderful, and seriously, I'll be ringing a lot of you up to see this and pestering the heck out of you to get this film made, because I think it's wonderful.
Island in the Stars is truly an epic science fiction adventure film.
Island in the Stars allows for all of these elements to come together in this confluence of a movie that I want to see, that is a action, adventure, fantasy, science fiction movie.
It will be fun, you will love it, and we will do everything we can to make it the best that there is. So please. This film will remind you of what you've missed out on and show you that it's still there, and you'll be able to talk to your kids and say, that's what it used to be like. Island in the Stars. I can't wait for you to see it.
Well, I certainly like the look of that. Now, he's been on the show before. We had a great conversation. I've grown to very much admire this man. He's done a lot of great things in his career, and he's done some really innovative stuff using new technologies to make something that might cost what you don't think it costs, looks like it costs 10 times what it cost. And his name, he's writer-director Tom Conkle. Tom, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you, Robert. I'm good. It's good to be back. You know, as a fellow filmmaker, talking about the state of indie film, I think of the quote from Star Trek: Undiscovered Country. It's like, there has never been a better time. I feel like you and I are simpatico because we've been knocking on the door while the house is burning down around us.
It's true.
Now, yeah, it's very true. So now with the advent of technology, it frees us up to tell stories. And with Island in the Stars, it really resonated with me. I wanted to say real briefly, I'm loving your video essays on story, on the state of entertainment. Something that you said recently, I think it was in the Not in Our Stars and Ourselves or something, but you said movies need to be about something. And that really resonated with me, that so many science fiction projects and so many franchise projects are about themselves. They're so recursive. You know, Star Wars is looking at itself, then Star Trek is looking at itself, and with Island in the Stars, we're looking outward. I thought to myself, what story do I want to tell? And then thought, what world do I want to build around it that it must be in to tell the story? Which I feel like is it's somehow an innovative concept now, but it's very much in the forefront of my mind. So I'm really glad to be here to talk about indie production, to kind of introduce you to something that we're crowdfunding and bring in some of the team.
Well, I have to tell you, you did what all smart writer-directors need to do, and that is to bring on a producer that'll keep you on the straight and narrow and kick your ass when you need. Look, dude, you got 10 more minutes to do a last setup, but she's Lucinda Bruce. Lucinda, welcome to the show. It's great to have you. Hang on a second. You're frozen. Let me fix your shot. I don't know why you became frozen, but before you say anything, allow me to fix this so we can hear you, because that wouldn't be good. Okay, now this is better. Now we have you. Hold on. So now you're alive. You're alive, and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
If you can bump up your volume a little bit, though. We had you, somehow the volume went down a little bit.
Oh, really? Can you hear me a little bit better now?
No, I still got to bring it up a little bit. Hang on a second, Tom. No, go ahead. What were you going to say about Lucinda?
Yeah. Well, she's very much a producer in the classic sense, in that her first sort of thought is, okay, these are the options you have. This is what it's going to take to do it. But if you feel passionate about it, I'll find a way to make it happen. And those people are rare. Those people that are not only just gatekeepers, but also creative and I was kind of joking with her earlier, where it's like, look, if you want rain on that window, I'll tell you the problems, but I will make it happen, and that's very much her. Yeah.
Well, let me see. I'm going to come back to her. So, Lucinda, would that be a fair characterization of you?
Not at all. No. God, no. 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 I think, being a producer is a very difficult job, and you get lots of different opinions about it from lots of different people, and lots of people call themselves producers and aren't, and lots of people don't call themselves producers and are. It's a very complex and interesting position to be in. And, especially when you have things like what's going on now, you're sort of seen as the bad guy, even though indie producers are not part of the AMPTP. So we have no association with them whatsoever. And we actually support the strike and, try to help those that are sort of struggling through it by continuing to do things like this and trying to create work that doesn't go against what we're striking for. Right.
Well, you also brought a few more people here, and one person I'm excited, can't believe he's on this show. A man who literally, I guess you could say, he exploded across. I was recently in a documentary about the films of 1982, the summer of 1982, and while this movie came out, I believe in Australia in '81, it came out in the summer of 1982, and I remember reading a review of this movie, and the headline of the review was "Apocalypse Pow." Might have been in Newsweek, and the great Vernon Wells. You know him from, I just got the 4K of Weird Science, Commando, Stuart Gordon's Fortress. He's been in so many things. I looked at the IMDb. I'm like, I can't say all these things. But he is a producer and one of the leads in Island in the Stars. So, Vernon, thank you so much for coming on Robservations, and welcome. It's a great honor.
It's my pleasure, and the honor is mine, because anytime you can get to talk about something that you are passionate about and something that stirs your soul, then it's an honor to be able to be involved in it. And this whole setup, I've produced before, so like Lucinda, I wasn't just walking into this with my eyes closed. I knew it was going to be tough, but the people around me and around us are just so good at what they do. Everybody pulls together. It's one of those wonderful situations where if I've got a problem, I ring Tom, like yesterday. Tom, I'm in a here in Brisbane, and I'm about to get on a plane, and I got to talk to you on the phone. Can we do something? And it was like everybody got to get the just come on right now. And it was like I was talking on the phone while I was walking onto the plane. It was totally ridiculous. But the point was, I got to say hello and I got to be there. But it's just amazing. And the whole thing for me was, I did a wonderful movie with Tom called Trouble Is My Business, a film noir that just I love, and I think was one of the best things I've done in a long time. And Tom, out of sheer, I think, to shut me up, because I was always bitching about something, said, tell me 3 films that you want to put on your bucket list before you leave the business or you leave. That's cute. Already I've got people burying me, good God. And I said, well, I'd love to do Treasure Island and play the pirate. And I would love to be the captain of the Nautilus in 20,000 Leagues. And I'd like to do a really, really, really true version of a vampire movie. Because remember, when that book was written, the vampire was in his 60s. He was not in his 20s. He had lived a life. That's how he was who he was. And Tom said, oh, okay. And that was that. He just sort of wandered off into the brush, and I didn't hear from him for about 3 months. And then he sent me the outline for Island in the Stars, and I flipped out. I think I threatened his life, actually, if I didn't do it. I was just like, this is it, man. You don't put me in this. I'm coming to get you. Well, sorry?
Oh, I was going to say, what I find really interesting about this project is, you're making it in Australia. And I've always been fascinated when I was a kid, when I was in my younger days, the Australian film industry, you had Ozploitation happening, movies like Stone, and obviously George Miller, of course, Dr. Miller made Mad Max, which broke out into the American market. Peter Weir was doing things like The Last Wave. You had movies like Breaker Morant being made. And I mean, I took The Last Wave and showed it to my 8th grade anthropology class, and all the kids hated me because they didn't know anything about the Aboriginal dream time, and I just wanted to ask you, I guess both you and Lucinda, about the Australian film business. If you could just give us a little preamble, like how did you get into it, and what was it like making films in Australia in the 70s, Australian television, and also, in the 80s, and being in something like The Road Warrior, which was an Australian movie that Mad Max made huge inroads around the world, and Peter Weir was making things like Picnic at Hanging Rock, and he'd made The Cars That Ate Paris. So what was that like for you?
It was, for me, it was interesting because I never wanted to be an actor. I'm one of those horrid little asses that I considered myself to be much better off behind the camera. I didn't like the way I looked, didn't like the way I sounded. I just know I'd rather be behind the camera producing or doing directing, anything but being in front of it. And George Miller's girlfriend, Sandy Gore, happened to see me in a stage play that I never really wanted to do, but I got conned into doing it. It was called, it was by Michel Tremblay, and it was about the French wanting to secede from Canada and become a French free-speaking state in one of the states there. And the government, of course, said, not happening. So he wrote a play about it, and then I got asked to do it. So I got Road Warrior because I was naked on stage masturbating.
Of course you did.
Which kind of puts a whole new tilt on Road Warrior when you say it like that. But that's how it came about in reality. And I had never done a film. I was totally at a loss. And I have to admit that Mel Gibson, George Miller, and all the other people in the cast were just amazing. They picked me up and carried me every time I fell down, and that was the reason it turned out to be what it was. It was just this wonderful big, everybody's here to do a job, we're all going to do that job. And I've carried that with me through everything I do. Lucinda's very much that, and so is Mike and our beloved Tom. They're very much in that vein. Nobody turns around and says, "Oh, for God's sake, do we have to work with this crap?" Well, not when I'm around anyway. But they're always there to give support, not hindrance. And I don't know about Lucinda, but for me, that is the biggest selling point to anything we do, is if it's done with the right attitude, with the right reasons, you get the right project and the right product at the end. And that's simple for me.
Well, I want to go to Lucinda. I mean, if you could give us a little, what is sort of the current state of the Australian film business? I was lucky to work on a big film down at Fox in Sydney, and of course they had done Phantom Menace down there, and they had done Matrix down there. But you had already, the Australian film industry really established itself, and really on the world stage. You had first-rate crews, you have incredible scenery. Obviously, Marvel's been down there making movies. What is it like for you to be producing in the Australian film industry today, and what are your thoughts on the business?
So that's a big question. I've got a lot of thoughts on the business itself, but I think Australia is an untapped market. Until recently, I would say, actually, because a lot of those big productions now are coming here. They've recognised that we have a lot of untapped talent here. There's a lot of first-rate crews and talent, and finally the world's kind of starting to see that. But I mean, we've been doing this for a long time. In fact, Australia was the first country in the world to create a feature-length film back in the 1800s. Mm-hmm. So technically, we started the whole process, and Los Angeles just made it huge, and made it a corporate corporate sort of business. And we've had some amazing films come out of Australia, really, and part of it's because of the incentive programs that we have down here. Like back in the day, I was born in 1980, so Mad Max was
You're a
little bit before my
child.
time. I'm a child. So, for me, it was Mad Max 2 and Mad Max 3. So that's kind of what I didn't see the original one until after I'd seen the second and third. So I got to see Vernon in the second one. So I was very happy with that. So be working with him now is awesome. But yeah, up until recently, I mean, I think we've had some incredible films come out of here, that just show off the quirkiness and the state that, I think Australia is in terms of the industry, is that we are growing and we have a lot to offer. I think there are always areas that we can improve in, and I think other areas where we excel in, as with anywhere else in the world. And I've worked in all sorts of different locations. I've worked in Vancouver, I've worked in Los Angeles and England and Europe and different places like that on different projects, and seen how all the different industries kind of work. And I think we just have a very sort of huge untapped pool of talent here.
Well, we have another person who's joining us, and that is Mr. Michael Smith. Welcome to the show, sir. Oh, we can't hear you.
The mute controls are a little wanting here.
There you go. We can hear you now. You sound good.
So thanks so much for having me. I'm a great admirer, long-time listener, first-time caller.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you. It's always weird when people who work in the industry, I'm like, you watch this show? But thank you. I appreciate that. So now
it's a small world in some ways.
Yes. So now what is your task on the film?
Well, I am the producer, co-writer, visual effects supervisor, and co-conspirator in general on the show. So help conceive the project.
So I was going to ask you, as the VFX supervisor, obviously to create something like what you are attempting to do. You basically are trying to make a $250 million franchise film property for less than that. And so...
Yes, this would be for...
So, and obviously in the video that we showed, you're making use of a lot of the new technologies that are available to you. And Tom, the previous film, the film noir movie, was also made a great use of technology. What is the role of that in the film, and how do you go about doing that, and why is Australia the great place to shoot it?
Well, Australia is partly for practical purposes, because there is a whole bunch of untapped talent in a way that we want to go and work with. It's full of people that we also admire, but there was also a thematic and kind of practical reason for it, which is that we kind of wanted to make Australia's Star Wars. In some ways, Star Wars is sort of a British movie, and Australia kind of needs a response to that, in my own opinion. And this kind of became that by accident, because very early on we had wanted to have Vernon be a centerpiece for this, and it grew out of an idea of, like, we have not really seen a piece of good, solid, hard science fiction that has an Australian flair to it. And I are both admirers of Australian films, the Australian New Wave. We've both studied Master and Commander at length, and probably reperform it, from any point if we wanted. And some of my favorite films going up. I mean, I think one of the first movies I saw that was in a sort of indie movie in an indie movie house was during the original theatrical run of Strictly Ballroom.
Oh yeah,
and it had a very different flavor to it. It was my first Baz Luhrmann movie too. So I very much enjoyed it, and sort of getting to be sort of in the same phrase of artistry as some of these other people that we admire, Luhrmann, Peter Weir. It's like we would be honored to be in that company, and that's that all kind of came together to form this. Is that there really isn't anything like it, quite literally. So so that's the Australia question. Is that we?
I love it.
We were like like Vernon will sound like he's from there. What if everyone else in the movie sounded like they were from there? It would be pretty cool, we thought, and then on top of that, it's full of wonderful locations. It's full of talented people, and they also have a good sense of sponsoring artistry at the state level to make it appealing for productions to go there. That it's the kind of socialism that that everyone here in Los Angeles wants to go hunting for, and yet they fight efforts to replicate it in our own state.
Yes.
It's partly it's just a slightly more friendly environment. We've had a very welcome reception when we've brought up the idea of doing this project, and it's a tight-knit community. Everyone knows everyone, especially the folks here on this call, and those all are pluses. And from a visual effects perspective, there are some tremendous visual effects powerhouses that are down there, and also there's a lot of know-how and talent, and I have always worked on the basis of sort of maximizing available resources, and I've been doing this for better part of 23 years, and some of the first projects I worked on was sort of like, well, what do you mean we're not actually going to get the stuff that we need to produce this? And that never really changed, and so instead we do what we're able to, and that can be the mother of wonderful invention and innovation. So I have a background in feature TV commercial effects and a lot of stuff for theme parks, and I did post-production work on these incredible difficult projects that would bring kind of a typical VFX house to its knees, and it was me and a couple of other people working on stuff and backfilling the work that was bid out to these places that have teams and teams of people who do it every day, but oftentimes they're doing it on a very confined scale where things are kind of always done a certain way, and that creates there's a lot of slack in those processes at times. I was always amazed at how many iterations of kind of just the one element within a shot could exist if you put it through a really, really big company's pipeline. The same thing might be in 20 different places, 20 different times, and that all has to be stored somewhere, and someone has to track it, and usually that person is not going to have anything to do with the people actually working on it. So a lot of what we're trying to do is to create a more efficient and creatively centered way of working, and that's the background to the last film that we produced, and it's what we would do moving forward with this. An interesting secret of visual effects was that there is no secret. Oftentimes, like some of the things that look magical and done up for behind the scenes have more time goes into the behind the scenes reveal of what they did than what went into it, and it was just instead like, nope, this was a completely bordering on usable element, and they did all of the hard work to make that workable by hand because there wasn't some magic wand of technology.
Well, absolutely. Now I want to go to to Tom, the mastermind. Obviously, you're co-writer. We've now heard from VFX and all that, which is fantastic. But Vernon, Tom, what the hell is this movie about? I think what Michael said, it's the Australian Star Wars. I love it. But Tom, what is this movie about? And Vernon, could you tell us a little bit about the character that you play? I mean, I don't know how you guys want to play that off each other. I don't want to ruin any secrets. But what can you tell us?
Well, Vernon, why don't you start? Yeah, you start.
Why don't I start? Sure. Why not? That's what you say when I'm on film. Why don't you start, Vernon? Just
when
do
you're
something
ready.
For God's sake.
Next time, try good.
Yeah. I think I love the character because he's duplicitous. You don't know whether he's the good guy or the bad guy, because when it's within his power to gain something, he's the good guy. And if it's within his power to gain something being the bad guy, he's the bad guy. So you're never quite sure of whose team he bats for, which I love about him. But deep down under it all, he has a very, very big soft spot for the young lady who plays the lead. And I think he would probably fight to the death to protect her. He never says that, never gives the issue that he's going to do it, but you get that feeling that that's what he would be like. And I like the fact that he's always up to something. He's never silent, never stops. He's always up to, every time you see him, you know something's going to go down, because that's the way he is. And I love him. I just love it. I think Tom and Mike did an amazing job of making the character more into who I am when I'm doing things than anything. And you know, he's a steampunky, get off my back. I got 12 guys behind me and they're all bigger than I am, so we'll kick your ass.
Nice.
He's that kind. He's just a nice man, really.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to do it. I mean, I've done a couple of small things for Tom.
Yeah.
Doing the intro things and that, which I get terribly excited about, because he sits somewhere deep in my soul, and I love him. I just love being able to, the fact that I'm going to do him, I think, is just so amazing.
Yeah. Rob, I'd like to say Vernon is genetically designed to play this part. This is a bucket list thing for all of us. We're all just at different distances from the bucket. We made a story that is about something, and what I mean by that is, as a writer, I've been writing. You and I have talked about this 25 plus years, and I know what it's like to be an actor in something. I know how to direct, but I wanted something to kind of coalesce all of it around a story. And so, reaching back to Joseph Campbell, the classic hero's journey, this is the story of a young woman who, as I put it, it's a slow drip, but you're bleeding sometimes in your life. And she is doing the right thing on a planet. She's literally manning a lighthouse, an interstellar outpost. And her father has disappeared some time ago. And so she's doing what's right and running the inn with her mother, when she suddenly is approached by a pirate who has a mysterious box. He crash lands. And this box seems to point to somewhere among the stars where her father might be. And he starts a journey for her. He's, of course, the herald. And in many ways, I always call him, he's sort of combination Han Solo and Obi-Wan Kenobi. He is the herald who, at first, she denies it. She's a flawed character. She is hiding. She's denied her own abilities. But on this journey, with a bunch of incredible mentors by her side that sort of populate her on aspects of her personality, she discovers her own power. She discovers a pathway to finding not only herself, but finding some purpose in life. At the end of the day, this film, as you walk out, people remember, I don't really care about the effects at the end of the day. None of us do. You remember this. You remember faces, and you remember how a film made you feel. And to me, when you walk out of a movie theater and you feel like that character for a second, that movie has done it. It's affected you. You're walking around, you're like, I'm that character. I feel it. I went on a journey with them. So at the end of the day, this film is going to make you feel like, you know what? I have had some point in my life where I was doing what I thought was right, or I did something for the money, or I did something to justify it, but I wasn't following my bliss. I wasn't following my path. So this movie, at the end of the day, is about following your quest and going on a classic old school adventure in a Hollywood-style film that you think of indies, sometimes you're like, oh, indies, cowboys eating pudding, that's going to be the film. No, an indie can.
Is that what you think about?
That's what I think about. But at the end of the day, an indie can be a genre film. Mike and I started Luminactus to do indie genre films, and we've watched the evolution of Hollywood sort of eating itself and doing this, and waited and learned and brought our skills together to create something that we want to see. You make a movie twice. You make it for yourself, but you also make it for an audience, and the audience is very much in our mind. And once I became friends with Vernon and worked with him, I realized that all of these things came together in the exact same destiny that this film was about. It's very meta, because I was having a slow drip, but bleeding, trying to please other people. And then I said, you know what? Let's just make this film. Let's find a way to do it in Australia. And that became my journey, which is echoed in this film.
Now, Tom Jr. Jackson, our moderator, wants to clarify this is live action.
This is live action. It is a completely live action film. It is a science fiction action adventure film, very much in the classic mold of the films Hollywood used to make.
Lucinda, I wanted to ask you, obviously, it doesn't sound like this is going to be hard to pull off or that he's bitten off more than he can chew at all. No, not at all. I'm curious, when, you're working with the visionaries that you have here that you have to now manage, and then you have to make sure. I mean, one of the things people don't understand about working producers is it's your job to get all of the equipment, the people power, everything that needs to be in place to make the filmmaker be able to make his day or make her day or make their day, however it is. And that's your job.
Pretty
and
much.
you're not somebody who's sitting in a cushy office, you're boots on the ground. So what is it like? Could you talk a little bit about the relationship that you have as a producer with Tom, and what are some of the unique challenges that Island in the Stars will face?
It's a good question. So, obviously, I love working with these guys. I think they're great. They make my job a lot easier because they understand. They've done producing before. They've done writing, directing. It's like usually when I'm sort of working on an indie project, there's a lot of sort of teaching moments that are happening that people don't really understand what producers do, which is great. And I love working with people that are learning and helping them to sort of grow and understand their craft better and help, indie films get made. But it's nice and it's always refreshing when you come into a group of people that, you can just kind of work with and they get what you have to do. And I liken producing to basically putting together jigsaw puzzles. You've just got to find all the right pieces and make sure they're going into the right spots. And it can be a huge job. No matter what the film, no matter what the project, no matter what the story, it can be a very difficult job at times. But thankfully, working with Tom and Mike and Vernon, they make my job a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, are there particular difficulties or things? I mean, obviously, you're going to be using a lot of new technologies like the volume stages and things like that to pull off epic scenes of science fiction wonder and mayhem. And what are some of the unique challenges that you're going to face for this particular film?
I think working with the volume, I'm pretty excited with that because it is going to be a large portion of the project. I have got other projects that are wanting to utilize the volume space, but I haven't yet worked in that space yet. So for me, it's going to be a fun new learning experience. We're working with Clayton Jacobson at Dream Screen Australia, who is an absolute gem of a human being and so supportive so supportive of indie films to begin with and indie artists and filmmakers. But his level of professionalism and his knowledge of the technology, he was building this in his garage before The Mandalorian was doing it. He's been working on this tech a long time, and he loves sort of stretching the limits of what the tech can do. And that's kind of the people that we need to work with that will help us, go beyond what we think is possible and really show this film and show these characters in this environment and make it so believable and real that you don't know what's real and what's not.
Right.
But it is live action pretty much most of the time. Apart, we're just working in that volume space and creating those backgrounds. So for me, that the technical, it's funnily enough, I love sci-fi, so I don't always see them as a technical challenge or anything specifically about this project that makes it overly difficult. It's actually probably because everybody kind of knows what they're doing, it's made it a lot easier for me. So it's so usually there's a few technical difficulties, but for the most part, I think the volume space, just working in that and finding out the limitations of that and what we can do within that space is going to be the learning space for myself.
Now, what is it like for the two of you in terms of things like prep and working in the volume stage? So much of the work has to be done in advance because you need stuff to put on the walls. So, you really have to get your, in terms of, I would imagine, shot listing and figuring out, okay, what exactly, you have to know, Tom, what we're going to see. And
Mike and I go through that, Robert. Yeah, definitely. You have to, as you say, plan in advance because the backgrounds have to happen before the action happens on the stage. And Mike can probably jump in here as well with me if you to discuss some of that, because what we're doing is world building. It's a combination of using this, but it's not only this. We'll also be on locations. We'll be building sets and often use the set extensions. But Mike has been working in the space a long time. I mean, he thinks in the sort of algorithms of the thing already. So I'm at a real advantage as a director because he and I can shoot the movie once, just on paper and previs. And Mike, maybe you can speak a little bit to what we plan on doing.
Okay, Mike, you're up. What do you plan on doing?
Yeah, I'm just trying to keep my keyboard sounds. So one advantage that we have from the get-go with this project is that the visual effects are not a entirely separate subcontracted contribution. Instead, they're going to be somewhat in-house, and the visual effects, as much as any other aspect of the movie, are going to be a central contribution of the people actually doing the movie. It's a human-powered film, just as much as rhythms or technology. So a lot of what we're doing is going to be planned in advance and designed in advance, and there will be a storyboard cut of the entire film before we shoot a frame of it, and that will make it so that we can establish what has to be produced, what has to be designed, and we can refine that, and we'll somewhat have the straggler will be the live action that we have to integrate into a lot of it. Right. Working in the volume is not specifically just like, you prep a whole bunch of things and then you just go and do your day. There's going to be interplay, and we're also looking at innovating in the space to have things that happen with volumes before that make use of the fact that volumes actually are an interactive medium. So you can actually have things that respond to like what you're doing in live action in the foreground. It's not just something that's playing back like a front projection or rear projection thing was in the old days. Yeah. Instead, there can be interactivity, and we're going to try and leverage some of that. And again, because it's we're not making the execution of the visual effects a separate thing that is sort of pitted against all of the other elements of the movie for resources. Instead, it's all a cohesive whole. There's going to be much more sort of intercooperation. I've been the subcontractor, vendor kind of thing in that equation a lot. So I'm producing this the way that I would want it produced from a visual effects and live action standpoint, just in general.
Yeah. And I would imagine that the two of you working together as the co-writers also if you're able to, like, if you need to zig and zag and change things around, it's much easier having this knowledge. I mean, you guys have worked together before, and you really understand how each other thinks, and you can these problems are not, you can surmount them as they present themselves.
As they present themselves, and I also want to allow for what Orson Welles called the happy accidents that happen. Often in the rehearsal process, I think you can over-storyboard and it becomes mechanical or feel flat. So a lot of what Mike and I are designing is to allow for performance. Performance trumps everything. At the end of the day, if something's not quite perfect on the technical side, but the performance is transcendent, I always go for the performance. And Vernon appreciates that too, where it's like, at the end of the day, I have to have the actors back. You have to have a feeling that story supplants everything and that everything's in the service of it. So Mike and I design the technical so that in a weird way, it's like memorizing lines. You have it in there, and then you can throw it away and execute, and then you can allow what is happening on the stage to happen, and you can let people relax into their part. And something that I'm doing with Vernon on the producing side is he's calling in a lot of people. We would love to have him reunite with, some other classic Australian actors. That
the Gyro Captain
wants to work with. You never know. Could be him. And we want to bring all those
Bruce
people
Spence.
In. And Bruce Spence, I love him. Bruce Spence has been in every big franchise, hasn't he?
Wait,
legend. I love that guy.
Yeah, and get Peter Garrett to play an alien and sing a song.
Oh.
Well,
I know, terrible.
Calling in a lot of markers. Yeah. He's going to be calling in a lot of markers too. He's been instrumental in helping us produce it that way, where he has a really deep bench of people we can call on. One of the reasons we're doing this crowdfunding is to get the admin out of the way so that we can make offers to some of these terrific actors that have said they're interested and they want to do it.
Now, Scott Bartholomew says, he asks, when do you begin filming? And he also says, I loved Vernon as Bennett in Commando. So when do you start filming?
Ideally, we start filming the end of 2024, and that would be in Australia. So we need at least 6 months of prep. So we're starting this first crowdfunding round to get all the admin, start making offers, doing those things, and then we're able to raise money through independent sources to finance the entire film, which will be, in Australian dollars ultimately.
Well, that's so. Tell us a little bit. So, this is a crowdfunding campaign. You have launched the crowdfund yesterday, right? It's gone live.
Correct. Yeah.
So, tell us about the crowdfunding campaign. Where can people find the crowdfunding campaign?
The crowdfunding campaign is on Indiegogo. We've outlined a ton of perks that give unprecedented access to the process of filmmaking. I think your audience in particular would be interested because if you're a cinephile, if you love genre film, if you want to have a bird's eye view, we've offered perks that are cinema savvy. It allows you to have behind the scenes talks with us. It allows you to have access to us. At a higher level, you can have dinner with us and talk film. But at every level, it includes you. Not with him, unless it's at McDonald's. But at the end of the day, each one of these perks at different levels allows you to participate in the process. I call it buying the ticket when we need you to buy it, and that's now.
By the way, for those of you, I did put the crowdfunding campaign in the live chat, and it's pinned at the top of this stream.
Thank you. Yeah, take a look at that. There's a lot we are trying to offer. We're trying to give value. A lot of these people have their hand out, and it feels like you're just giving them money, but we actually are trying to create value with the perks that we have. And as a filmmaker, I love the idea of having a dialogue with the people who, like me, are kind of fed up with Hollywood and what things are being produced right now. We're trying to make an indie genre film right now, and this team understands that ultimately it's to serve an audience. It's to tell a story that not only we will enjoy, but the audience will. And one piece of wisdom that got passed to me is in my other day job, I'm an actor, and I got to work with a lot of the Pythons. I worked with John Cleese and Michael Palin doing sketch shows, and one thing they said to me that stuck was, you don't have to please everyone. You just have to please enough people. And so this film is for science fiction fans. It's for people that are cinephiles. It's for people that love Jules Verne and Treasure Island and classic, Joseph Campbell hero journey. And in that way, it is uncompromising because it is an independent film that didn't come through as a white paper where marketing reverse engineered this story. We're telling a story that 14-year-old us would want to watch.
Nice. Is that true, Vernon? Did 14-year-old you want to see this?
I don't know. I haven't got to that age yet. When I get there, you'll be the first one I'll let know. I think, I'm now I'm 100 years old, and and I desperately want to see it at this age. I think inside everybody, all of us, if we're into film and into the indie scene, like all of us are, there's this whole thing that you're waiting for somebody to actually do something that's worthwhile.
Right.
It's that simple. And we do a lot of worthwhile films, and they're brilliant, wonderful. And that's the point, is that I'm waiting, and this to me is that worthwhile moment in cinema history of what we're doing, because no one's going to do anything like we're doing. It's that simple. We'll be the first ones to do it, and we'll be on top of the pile. Everybody will follow it, believe me. But it's better to be the guy out in front that's going to win the race, and that's us. And I want to see it. Yeah, God, I want to sit in the bloody theater and watch it. I mean, when I did Tom's film with him, Trouble, I think I drove him insane saying, when do I see it? When do I see it? Where's it playing? I want to see it. Tom, is it ready yet? It was like, I was so intrigued with what we'd done and the way it was made. I was like, God, I've got to see this. I've got to see what was done. And even now, as an actor, and I've done films a lot, and I still get that feeling when I do a film that I really love working in and that I want to see. I still get that feeling. Oh God! And I never believe that I'm in it. I tend to play third person. I watch it from a whole different perspective just to see what it is and what's happened and what was done. And then I'm like, wow, I wish I did. Oh, I did do it. Yeah, that's right. It's a pretty good film. But I think that's what we all want. We want that. Never let the magic disappear. To me, the magic that we have, us four and the rest of the team that will be involved, that magic, we can never let that go away, because that is what this business is all about, is to bring a little bit of magic into somebody's life or everybody's life so that they can see it and sit there. A 14-year-old kid could watch it and go, wow, I want to do those special effects. I want to be a special effect, and go on to become another Mike. Right. And that's what the whole thing's about. We need to still have that magic every time we do it, and every time, I've always said, if I go on the set and I'm bored, I don't want to be there, that's the end of my career. I'm killing people at the doorway trying to get in to see what I'm doing that day. It's still that magic. I just love it, and I don't think I'll ever lose it.
This is totally, just since I have you here, this is totally unrelated. Well, maybe I don't have you anymore. No, but since so you've been in a lot of films that have become beloved cult favorites. Not just Road Warrior, but Weird Science, Commando, Stuart Gordon's great movie, my friend Stuart Gordon, rest in peace, Fortress.
Yep.
What's it like for you as an actor to have made things over the last decades that people, new generations of people, see again and again and over, and that people will remind you of something you did decades ago, and they watched it yesterday maybe, and they still love it? What's it like to have that kind of a legacy?
It's, as Tom probably will tell you, I have no consciousness of that. I can't look at it and go, oh, I'm wonderful, I did that. I look at it purely from the perspective of somebody I've had people come up to me at shows and they go, oh, Vernon, I saw you in this wonderful King of the Ants movie that was just amazing, man, just wonderful. And I go, huh? What? And they go, King of the Ants, Stuart Gordon's film.
Yeah.
No, I don't think I did. And they will go and get the thing and bring it and show me. And I'll go, wow, that was me. Because I just get so, I can't sit and look at myself and go, God, I'm good. It doesn't work like that with me. My thing is I go home and beat my wife up because I think I'm so bad.
You're going to get canceled. Don't say that on YouTube.
I'm kidding.
You're so bad. Yeah.
I can't get past that I'm the luckiest, and as I say, I'm the luckiest guy on the planet. I get to do something that I love every day of my life, working with people I adore every day of my life. It doesn't get any better than that, and that's all I can look at. And when I get to go in front of the camera, all I can do is what I do best, and that is be the character I'm playing, make it work, make it become alive. And I have no other thing I do. I just love it. People like Tom seem to think I can act, which sort of bores me.
But he just doesn't listen.
Exactly.
Lucinda, I was going to ask you, obviously with this kind of technology, and I think that it hasn't been used a lot. The spirit of low budget filmmaking, especially in the genre space, in terms of thinking about making theatrically released movies. I mean, we grew up watching things like Battle Beyond the Stars or Terminator, where you had, Terminator is a $4 million movie. Battle Beyond the Stars, I think, was $7 million, and it was the most expensive movie Roger Corman had made. And there has not been a real push toward making big budget, or not big budget, but epic science fiction movies for low budgets. You see it in fan films, but for you're really biting off a lot. And from a producing perspective, how are you going to do it? Like, what is it? What are some of the things? How are you going to approach this to get it done the way everybody wants it made?
Well, I think it's such a balance, really, when you're doing stuff like this. Sorry, there is a really strong echo.
Yeah, there's a strong... I don't think they can hear it out on the YouTube. We only can hear it.
All right. Great. So to me, it's like any other film. When you go to do a budget of a film, you're guided by a lot of variables and different things. And obviously, the exchange rate of the US dollar to Australian dollar helps us tremendously in this situation because it's very strong. But all the different variables that come together in filmmaking and putting budgets together, it's the same for every film. It will always turn out different, but it's always the same things that I go through, the same steps that I go through to kind of get to where I need to be to figure out, can we raise this much money? Can we drop this out a little bit, lower this cost? There's a bit of a process to it, but that's the challenge of being a producer, and that's my job as a producer, is to find a way to make something work with whatever the budget limit is. And what we determine that to be is guided by where are we filming it, what actors are we having in it, what level of actors, all these different things that kind of do guide you to an end point eventually. And that still can change, one minute you're looking at A-list actors, the next minute you might need to drop down to C or B-list actors, and that drops down your budget tremendously. But there's the two sort of sections of a budget. There's the above the line and below the line, and the below the line shouldn't really change too much once you've done it.
Right.
It should generally stay pretty much the same, and that's kind of your core budget. When you go to above the line and you're looking at actors to bring in and the costs sort of associated with that, that's when the budget can fluctuate from 5 million to 25 million to whatever. But the thing is, with I think Hollywood budgets, they're so massive, they're almost out of control, in some ways. And I think they've just been blown out and blown out and blown out. But again, that below the line cost isn't really changing very much.
Right.
A lot of those below the line people are not getting paid any more than what they were 5 or 10 years ago. So there's this sort of, for me, it's a really cool challenge to try and make sure that everyone's getting paid fairly, all the costs are being covered properly, that safety is key on set. So you can't cut corners with lots of things. There's a lot of things that you just simply can't risk cutting corners on when it comes to a budget. Safety is the key one. Of cast and crew, of everybody that sets foot on that set. You want to make sure that they go home to their families at night. But yeah, it's the challenge is finding, it really is above the line, and finding the actors that you want and the costs associated with that really makes budgets fluctuate like they do.
Yeah, we put together a business plan real quick, if I may. As a director, there is never enough time and never enough money. No matter what the budget is, there's never enough time and never enough money. And we put together a business plan. And with that plan, there is a return on the investment that anyone makes in the film, because we're able to take advantage of significant tax breaks that Australia has made available to us. Very significant ones. And on top of that, we have value engineered the entire film to where the problem with, you've talked about this on your show, the problem with a $200 million film or $300 million film is you're swinging for the fences every time. It's like, this doesn't make $1 billion, we're out of business, we lost money. That's not a business plan. That's a hope. That's a wish. If you look at how many films have actually made $1 billion, you go, okay, what was I thinking? So we said, how do we value engineer this down to a manageable budget that takes advantage of these tax breaks, gets money back to an investor right away, and what's the money path? We're always looking at that. And as far as story and how we make it, I always feel like a filmmaker's job is not to follow trends. A filmmaker's job is to set trends. And we've seen this trend towards just exploding budgets and a dearth of original ideas. Everything's either based on something that already exists, or it's a remake, a reboot, or a franchise. And we said, okay, what's missing? How do we make that work? And with Lucinda and with Vernon and with Mike, I sat down for a couple of years and we looked at how do we value engineer this film so that it returns money to anybody that puts an investment, a significant investment in it, but also discovery. How does it get out to the right people? Again, doesn't have to be everybody, just enough people. And on top of that, how do we create a film that utilizes our skill set integrated so that, say I want to change one shot of a spaceship, we don't have to send it to 5 different companies that bill us every time I go, yeah, can we change the lighting a little bit? We can do that what's called vertically integrated, so that Mike and I can sit in the post process and while we're editing it go, let's go ahead and tweak that and fix it. And to me, that's how you should be making movies. Unfortunately, you've got so many levels and so many, admin and so many other third parties that it's exploded the budgets on it so that it's not viable to take chances. We're not taking chances because there's too much money at stake.
We're also not taking chances because I'm trying to get you in sync. I just want people to know that it's not them. I don't know why everyone else is in sync.
Yeah.
But
I've never been in sync. Like I say, I'm setting the trend.
Well, let me go to Mike and ask you, Mike. I mean, in terms of what you have to surmount, all of the incredible difficulties, or I wouldn't call them, maybe not difficulties, challenges. Call them challenges, because any movie is full of difficulties. But I think challenges and having this kind of a production process. And again, I was saying earlier, I just don't understand why we haven't seen more ambitious, low-budget science fiction that aspires to be. We used to. We did see it in the 80s. You had what Corman was doing, not just with Battle Beyond the Stars, but with things like Galaxy of Terror. Of course, you had people like James Cameron doing the effects. So I guess, you're following in those footsteps. But we don't have people doing that anymore with the eye toward making theatrically released lower budget epic sci-fi. That kind of went away, which is sort of strange to me that everybody expects, well, we can't make a sci-fi movie unless we spend $100 million. So from your perspective, what's the secret? How are you going to do it?
Well, the secret is really closer interaction with the different stakeholders, and I think also not having the stakeholders be opposing parties in the process. Filmmaking, in a way, used to be a much more integrated process, like in the studio days.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes the studio was, they were directly employing the people who wrote it. They had the talent under contract. They had their music department in house. They had their optical department in house. Their title department in house. And then they released it and sometimes put it in their own theaters. But that meant that it was in their own interest to kind of protect the overall bottom line, but they usually weren't like picking favorites or making it where like it's going to be, we're going to suffer, financial losses in our little camp if we help out this other party. So we're trying to do it in a more integrated fashion. That, I think, is really the secret beyond anything else, is to make it where you're not trying to do it like you construct a building where where you've engaged an architect. The architect isn't the person who's actually constructing it. They're not going to be the people who operate. They're not going to get another party that's going to lease it. That means that there's a lot of slack in the process and a lot of disconnect, because everyone's just sort of looking at whether they came out of their step in the process well. And I think when everyone is trying to work for the same goal, that helps a lot. So that's why I was a fan. There was actually an interesting example comparatively recently, which is when some of the later seasons of the rebooted Battlestar Galactica, they brought their visual effects in-house, and I think that helped them to create a more consistent show and keep the budget spiraling. I was kind of surprised to not see that adopt more really talented folks involved, and I worked with a couple of them personally, and that seemed to be the right approach, and it kind of stuck in my mind after that. And then, strangely enough, we kind of had a good proof of concept with our own film as well, which is that when we weren't trying to extract more value from subcontractors because we were the ones doing it, then we just looked after the overall process better.
Yeah, I mean, even what is it, Gareth Edwards, who has Creator coming out next month. His first movie that really broke through was Monster. And I remember, that had some really amazing effects. And I read that, I made this for $15,000. Well, that's just what people say. But still, he was still doing his own effects. And there was some really impressive stuff, because as the director who is also doing his own effects, he knows what's in the frame. He knows what's in the proscenium that you're seeing. So you don't have to do profligate spending on effects, because like Tom was saying, it really only matters, it's this. And if you can get people, you only need to have, I think this isn't really understood, but you only need to have effects enough to convey the moment. It's really the emotion and the people. If you just use establishing shots or a judicious use of a spaceship zipping by, you can be on a set for a long time, or use the volume before you have to pop outside and show some starship mayhem. And as long as you design it from the get-go, and you guys have already proven it with your noir project, which is really impressive, what was pulled off there. And you think, I remember looking at like Cary Conran, what he did like Sky Captain, and I figured, they're going to be doing that was one of those movies, and no one ever did anything else like that. I mean, you kind of the noir film kind of had a little bit of that, but I thought more people in Hollywood would embrace that, and they haven't. I mean, fan filmmakers have, so. But you're confident that you can pull it off.
Yeah, I'm confident. It's this is a project that's being done among friends, and so so just not, when we don't have the dynamic of, if we don't put a visual effects house out of business, we haven't done our job. I forget who that quote was attributed to, but I think it was someone working on a project with like Rhythm and Hughes back in the day before they ceased to be, And we're trying to do the opposite. We're trying to make it work. It's a cohesive whole. We're working cooperatively, and we don't want to get it into the situation of like, well, we're going to just keep iterating this shot until someone approves it for arbitrary reasons. Instead, it'll be like, well, we can keep iterating it, or we can decide that this works well enough. What's in the frame is good, even if a couple pixels beyond it, it's not working well, and then we move on, instead of just being like, well, we're going to go back, we're going to review a stack of shots, and we're not having a good day, so we're going to reject a bunch of them, and that's House's problem.
Totally.
The confidence to pull it off. With Vernon, and between he and I alone, we have 100 years of experience doing this, literally. So you bring to it not a kind of bravado of like, I can pull this off, but a sobering kind of, I know the steps this has to take. I'm not just a technical person. I also have directed theater. I've directed television. I know, what people need to hear. I know how to move the camera, to do mise en scène. Those kinds of skills you build over a lifetime, and then you focus. A film is a snapshot of where you are at the moment. Nothing is finished, it's only abandoned. We're going to make this film as best we can with the skill set that we have, and then we're bringing to bear all of the talents, all the various talents that we have to this purpose. So we've shown somebody how we're going to make money, which is very important, what the money path is, where the audience is for this, the sort of solidity of the story itself, but then we're bringing in the talent so that the execution is there. So I think this is kind of a nice indie perfect storm where we kind of had our practice with these other films, and now we're making Island, which is our next ambitious project that brings to bear everything we've learned, and we will learn everything again and more.
Well, on that note, I mean, I think that. Go ahead, Vernon.
Oh, I was just going to interrupt to say I have a director outside the window with a gun threatening to shoot me if I don't get on the set.
Well, listen, it was a great honor to have you. Thank you for your time. We'll let you go.
Thank you, guys. I wish I could have stayed till the end, but I do have obligations, unfortunately, and I must go look after them. But thanks, guys. I love you all, always. And as always, please, God be with you.
Thanks a lot, Vernon. That was what an exciting thing to have Vernon Wells on this show. I just have to say, that's pretty badass. So thank you, Vernon Wells, for being on Robservations. Okay, but to wrap this up, sort of, Lucinda, I guess, with you, where are you at in the process producing the project now? You've launched the crowdfunding campaign. You're doing all the pre-production work. Now, are you in Australia right now?
I am, yeah. So I'm here pretty much most of the time. If I'm not in LA or Vancouver or somewhere else, I'm based out of Australia. So I've done a lot of indie films here, but I've also done a lot of indie films overseas and internationally. So, but here, I mean, you can't really get past free healthcare cover and things like that. So I'm here whenever I'm not traveling.
Right.
But the producing process, yeah, I mean, this Indiegogo campaign is really important to us because it's, I'm, as an indie producer, there's a bit of a misnomer, I think, around producers and the fact that they always seem to have lots of money. That's not what an indie producer really is. Indie producers are kind of working with very little, next to nothing, to make things happen. And
yeah,
I've shot feature films for $10,000 up to $1 million. And you make do with what you have, and you get really good at making do with what you have, and you do get a bit sort of fed up of asking people for favors, of course, and always not being able to pay people what they're worth. But when you're creating art and you're making films and you're sort of bringing stories to life, I think that's the treasure, that's the gold there, and that's why we do what we do. That's why I do what I do. I love producing, I love telling stories, I love making movies, and there's nothing else I want to do with my life. There's nothing else I can do with my life. So in terms of producing, this project, yeah, we're sort of in this process of raising this what you would possibly call seed money. We're trying to get the basic sort of stuff in place so that we can make official pay or play offers to actors that we would really love to see come into the film.
Yeah.
We're trying to get other actors with, strong clout and things like that attached in order to, hopefully get the film gaining some traction with their attachment to the film. And we have to then, there's a process with the producer's offset, the tax incentive that's available here at a federal level, which is the 40% offset, which a lot of people love and come here for.
Yeah.
And
all right.
And yeah, exactly. So that's a process in and of itself. There's a lot to it. It's not a straightforward process necessarily, but it's complex, but I think for a reason. They want to make sure that you've got all your things in place and you're not just going, hey, I want to make a movie. I don't know how to do that, but I'm just going to go for this offset thing. So they kind of want to know that you know what you're doing and what you're talking about.
You mean you can't just buy them a slab of VB and be on your way?
No, unfortunately. If only it were that easy. It used to be that easy, I think.
Oh, well, I was going to say, when I was down there, it was like, oh, mate, I just need a slab of VB, and that's all right. And I'm like, what?
That's right.
What did you just say?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Obviously, you can still buy people slabs of beer as a I did that on a recent
Just don't buy them
film,
VB. Get them Coopers or something.
Coopers, not Fosters, but yeah, something good.
No, Coopers is good.
But,
I like Coopers.
But yeah, so doing all of that sort of takes time. Making movies is a time-heavy process.
Yeah.
If you have the money, you can just go out and do it, and it's great, and you can just pay people what they're worth. But the problem is that 90% of us don't have access to that kind of funding in this industry, and it's a problem. I mean, you can make a film and pay everybody properly for $1 million here. You can it's not that difficult. It's not rocket science to me. But the money just doesn't, they'd rather put, 200 million into a blockbuster that's got to make 4 to 5 times its money back than make
it might or it might not.
$1 million films. It might or it might not. But then you could put $1 million into 40 different films and you've spent a quarter of what you would spend on one big blockbuster and you've got 40 chances of making your money back. So, it's to me, I think it's overly complex and it doesn't need to be. I think they make it overly complicated. I think it's too corporatized, if that's even a word. I think I
completely agree. No, I completely agree with you. I think that no one knows how, especially we were talking about Australian movies. If you look at the diversity of stories that were told within the Australian film business in the 70s and into the 80s, you guys did a lot of amazing stuff. I mean, whether you wanted to do a historical period piece like Breaker Morant, or whether you wanted to do Peter Weir doing the Last Wave about the Aboriginal Dreamtime, or George Miller, or Baz Luhrmann doing his Red Curtain trilogy, starting with Strictly Ballroom, or there was all kinds of other movies, biker movies in stone.
There were. But they came out of a time, I think, a resurgence of Aussie cinema and Ozploitation, as it's called, and things like that we now call it. But back in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, we had great, better tax incentives than what we do now. You used to get 150% back on your tax just to invest in a film. No, it was just simple.
Wow.
So you were guaranteed your money back even if the film tanked at the box office. And that's where all of those films came. A large portion of the Castle, Strictly Ballroom, a lot of these really beautifully made, exceptionally sort of indie films that were just so gritty and fun to watch and unusual. And I mean, we've all grown up, I grew up with a lot of these films, and they don't make films like that anymore because that time, that sort of processing line is thinned out, and now it's a 40% tax offset. And I'm not necessarily saying that bringing back the 10BA, which is what it was called, is the solution, but it's certainly bred so many amazing films and amazing filmmakers and gave them the platform that was required to get those. I mean, if the 10BA didn't exist, I dare say that those films wouldn't have been made. A lot of those films, wouldn't be with us today. And you kind of look back, and I see that as a bit of a golden age of Australian cinema. I'm not saying we're not making great films now. We are. There are some great films being made, but there seems to be less eyes on them and less opportunity to. The funneling process is much thinner and harder to get funding, in Australia for certain sort of things, and you have to prove that you've got a pathway to audience and stuff that never really was an issue before. But now, because it's a business and everybody wants to make money from it and make sure that it functions as a business, when really it's art and it's creativity. And I think if you kind of stamp on that too much, you lose a lot of the good stuff that, we wouldn't have had a lot of those good films if it was just about making money. And back then it wasn't, obviously. They were like, let's do 150% tax back on an investment in a film. Like, what government does that? The Australian government did that. It was bloody awesome,
Yeah. Well,
so it's sad that doesn't happen anymore.
Well, on that note, I want to thank you for being on the show. I very much appreciate you coming on, and I wish you all the best. Break a leg on this project,
Thank you.
and I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see what happens. And I think I'll go over to Mike and say to Mike, going into this project and being where we're at now, can you give us, we're at the beginning of a long process, obviously, with this crowdfunding campaign, and you guys are already in pre-production on other things for the film now. What are sort of your hopes and where are you going to be in, say, a year with this project?
Well, ideally, in a year we will, be either starting or thick into production. And the reason that we're, seeking this sort of initial seed funding, Tom put that very well, is that it helps to kind of get things moving and will help it kind of gather a critical mass. And there's a lot of planning and there's a lot of thought process to kind of expound upon what's been scripted. We have a lot of solid ideas about how things should look and how they should work. One of the reasons that we're going to, kind of storyboard animatic the entire movie is that oftentimes in projects that I worked on, we would construct the project that way, where we would just board out and scratch dialogue, everything, because then we would have a much better sense of how things were working before we had to, commit things, to tape, disc, film, or whatever.
The Pixar way, Pixar does that. And
yeah, absolutely. And a couple of things just for context, you actually mentioned Pixar, and that's is that every Pixar project kind of had its disaster phase where it's sort of like, this is not working, and it needed kind of some retooling to become something amazing and wonderful, and that's not just a recent thing. That was on early projects that were these classics, and we want to work this over very thoroughly. So that it can, take its place as one of these other kind of, important works that also happen to be a popular entertainment.
Right. Well, I'm excited, and I wish you, again, you two, to break a leg, and I know you have your work cut out for you. And thanks for being on the show. It's good to have you here. Now, Tom.
Yeah.
Hopefully you'll be in sync, but if not, it'll be like watching a Japanese film, dubbed. I don't know why you're not in sync.
I don't know. Am I in sync now?
No, which is weird. Okay. It's weird. You know what? If you click off and click back in here. Can you do that?
Okay, let me do that.
And I'll cut over to myself and say, first of all, I just want to thank all of my guests. I'll preemptively thank them and then bring Tom back. But for me, it's a real thrill when people that are making films, especially films as ambitious as this, come on the show. And as you know, I do a lot of interviews with people and filmmakers, and it means a great deal. So I want to thank Mike and Lucinda, and especially Vernon Wells. My God, that's crazy. And of course, Mr. Tom Conkle, who made this all possible, and he's become one of my favorite people. And the ambition that he's showing here is something that I've admired my whole life, and that's what got me into the business. And it's great to be able to support independent film, and I hope all of you watching this will go to their Kickstarter campaign. It just launched yesterday. You can see it's pinned at the top of the chat here, so go there and help out if you can. They have a lot of really great perks. It's a great campaign. It's on Indiegogo, Island in the Stars. Check it out. So, Tom, maybe you're in sync. We're back on you. Are you in sync?
Am I in sync?
No.
No.
I don't
know what?
why.
I will give you an answer with you can add subtitles. I just wanted to say what a great team of people. You are an inspiration to me as well. I literally was listening to you while I was working on my car today and nodding along with you because you're in two worlds. You understand the process of filmmaking, but you also are a fan of filmmaking and storytelling in general, and very insightful. And so I'm just grateful to be here. I wanted to tell you. The state of film entertainment right now is very polarized, as you have said, and films have been focusing a lot on sort of darker subject matter and don't have heroics and have a lot of cynicism. And so this film is really a chance to kind of rekindle the magic of Hollywood's second golden age. And we want to create this film for the audience, your audience, and we're asking them now to enroll in the process through Indiegogo, and you can have access to Vernon and hopefully other great stars that you want to be involved with. But I just am just grateful to have this team, and I'm looking forward to kind of building out this amazing world.
Well, and I think too, I mean, I just love the fact that, you know, there are a lot of people doing amazing work in genre cinema, and they're not breaking the bank. And like Jason Blum and what they're doing over at Blumhouse, you know, we've seen incredible examples of, you know, Lee Whannell made Invisible Man for $8 million. And you look at something like that with Emmy Award actors or actresses, you know, and I think Blumhouse, to me, I look at Blumhouse and I think to myself, they're making movies for $8 million that make $100 million at the box office. That is the model that people should be following. This idea that you're going to look what we've seen this summer. You've got Mission Impossible, you have The Flash, and you have Indiana Jones. All the craft you want on display. Those movies certainly were beautifully made. They had all the technology in the world, and yet they certainly didn't make their money back. And they cost $300 million each.
They cost too much. Yeah, too much. Yeah.
And the idea that and I always bang on, as you know, on this channel. People have 90 minutes or 2 hours, and to fill their time, they can watch YouTube, they can watch TikTok, they can play video games, and movies were the art form of the 20th century, but in the 21st century, there's a lot more places where people can go. I mean, even I find myself flicking through Instagram reels, and then I'm like, oh my God, an hour just went by. You know, I've been, this time suck, and then I think about, you know, my own independent film work, like Tango Shalom. I worked on it for years, cutting that movie and scraping it together. No one who watches a movie, I mean, people don't delineate between watching Apocalypse Now or watching Battle Beyond the Stars. It's they don't sit there and go, well, Apocalypse Now was much more expensive than Battle Beyond the Stars. It's like, were you entertained for 2 hours? That's all that matters. Yeah. So this idea that you can make great genre entertainment that aspires to be Star Wars. I mean, the funny thing is, if you look back, I mean, it wasn't that it was cheap back then, but Star Wars wasn't exactly a gigantic $40 million Star Trek the Motion Picture kind of a thing. It was a $10 million movie, and it was wildly ambitious.
Yeah, and an indie film, let's be honest. It didn't really get developed by a studio somewhere and get handed to George. George came up with it sort of as its own little fiefdom, and then found somebody that believed in it, in Alan Ladd Jr., and said, yeah, you know, I don't quite understand it, but I think it's going to be good, and I'll put it up. But you're absolutely right. The problem right now is you can't take chances and spend so much money. You have to find a happy medium. And if you want to make Hollywood-style genre films, you have to value engineer them the way we're trying to do it now. You have to be able to make it where you're not swinging for a home run every single time, that it's okay to get an on-base hit with something like this, and you're going to make your money and get to make another film, because that's the whole point. You want to entertain people. You want to have people, like you said, they have 90 minutes they can parse out and go, well, I'll spend it with you. I'll do this. And there's a lot of things competing for people's attention now. You know, film, as you said, it's not the apex thing anymore, but I still think film can do things that other things can't.
And there will always be a time where it feels magical to sit in a theater, the world disappears, and you go into this other world and you feel something. And that's when people talk about immersive entertainment. Well, that really, to me, that's as few barriers, even technology barriers, between you and the experience of a film. So that's what we're trying to do, and I really appreciate your support on it, and hopefully we can update you with things that are going on, and people will take a look at these perks and it'll make sense to them.
Yeah. Well, listen, I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank Lucinda. I want to thank Mike. I want to thank Vernon for your time and coming on the show. And thanks. I very much appreciate you, Tom, and come back whenever you want. And thank you for being here. Now, I want to tell everybody this. The film is called Island in the Stars. Once again, it is the Kickstarter campaign, the seed money that they need to make pay or play offers. That's what they're trying to raise. They got great perks. So go to Indiegogo, Island in the Stream. Island in the Stream. I could sing that song. Island in the Stars. Now I'm hearing that song. I'm hearing the duet being sung. I don't know what to. I'm hearing Dolly Parton in my head. Which is better because I was hearing Peter Garrett earlier singing "Beds Are Burning," which was a whole different thing. So now I'm listening to Dolly Parton. Maybe they could do a duet of it. I don't know. But anyway, I want to thank the team from Island in the Stars for being here, and I want to encourage everybody to go look at their Kickstarter campaign, their Indiegogo campaign. See, now I'm all discombobulated and I don't even remember what I'm saying. But I want to thank them all for being here, and we'll have them back, and we'll definitely, I invite them to send us progress reports and show us footage when they can. And this is basically, this kind of movie is exactly what this channel stands for. And I'm happy to have them be a part of it. So I will say goodbye to everybody, and thank you for all being here. And I wish you the best. Break a leg, and we're going to be watching this Indiegogo campaign very closely. So thanks. Now, everybody, Irene Jobson says she loves everyone. She appreciates everybody. So, Irene, thank you for that. Now everyone's laughing at me. Islands in the Stream. I'm sorry. No, Island in the Stars. Why, that's the whole great part of the title. So, anyway, listen, I'm going to let everybody go. This was a special episode of Robservations. Once again, I want to thank Tom Conkle and his team for being on this show. I want to thank Tom Jr. Jackson for moderating. And I want to thank everybody who generously supports this channel via Super Chats and tips. And thank you for that. And, of course, Tom Jr. Jackson, obviously, for his great moderation. I will be on the Zod Rider show later tonight celebrating the life and times of Mikey Sutton, who passed away a couple days ago. And after achieving his goal of setting up a project, he just signed a deal to write a novel. And unfortunately, he had a stroke and passed away. So we're going to talk about him later on tonight on the Zod Rider show. So tune in there if you want to see us. And I will be back with Robservations tomorrow. And remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to everyone, have a better day. Wait a minute. Hang on a second. Wait. Hold on. Wait a second. I'm not going away right now. You're not getting rid of me right now, and I'll tell you why. Because 1001 Johnny sent in a tip, which I didn't see. So I'm going to read his tip. He said, this is part 1 of 2. 1001 Johnny said, in 1990, Subaraya Productions teamed with the South Australian Film Corporation to make the first Australian entry into the long-running sci-fi classic series, Ultraman. And then he goes on to say, one of the stars of this entry of Ultraman was Ralph Cottrill, who plays Captain Arthur Grant. Mr. Cottrill, I think it's Cottrill, right? Brings to life every scene he's in. I haven't seen him in anything besides Ultraman, but I dare say he was a gem of the Australian people. Well, I have to tell you, look, as you know, I was in Australia for a year. I was in Sydney, and I was in Tamworth and Sydney, Australia, working, shooting all the behind the scenes on Superman Returns. And I loved Australia. The crews were great. The people were great. It was so much fun. The country was beautiful. If I could get on a production and they would pay my way, I would go to Australia to make a movie any day of the week and twice on Sunday. It's incredible. So Tom and his crew, I think, are going to have a great time. And they're going to get something pretty special. So that's exciting. And so once again, see, you can't get rid of me. But first of all, thank you, 1001 Johnny. I very much appreciate you supporting the channel that way. And I'm glad I didn't miss your tips. So thank you very much. And now, on that note, I will absolutely say I bid you a good evening.